There's a line in this movie which heavily implies that people who have letterboxd accounts are budding serial killers, which is mean. Doesn't make it wrong, but it's mean. Welcome back, everybody. I'm Jake, the Scary Story Guy, and today we are talking about the latest installment in the Scream franchise, Scream 6. Now, I don't have as much of a relationship with these movies as a lot of people do. I'm not a fan. It's just that, you know, it's not an all-time series for me. Most people seem to think that the first Scream movie is great and the second one is good. I personally view the first Scream movie as good and the second one as fine, which is probably why I never got around to seeing the third or fourth movies in the franchise. I heard number 4 is actually not bad, came out back in 2011. I might fire it up someday. But after a whole decade off, and after the death of legendary director Wes Craven, the franchise is back in full swing with last year's reboot, which I did see, and this year's sequel to that, Scream 6. So while this video will primarily discuss and review Scream 6, I am going to talk about how it fits into the rest of the series as a whole. I'll start spoiler-free, give the movie a rating, and then I will dive into some spoiler talk at the end, but I'll be sure to warn you before I do that. Okay, so for those of you who aren't aware, the Scream movies are a franchise of slasher films that take a very meta approach to the genre. Horror film is a frequent topic of conversation in these movies. The killer's always asking people, like, do you like scary movies? There's always someone in the friend group who's like a horror movie expert. Let's keep those people alive if we could, by the way. So the movies are very referential or even self-referential, and they will often either conform to or very intentionally subvert the tropes of the slasher genre, which is fun, but the movies do get a bit predictable, formulaic as a result, and Scream 6 is not immune from that. However, and I'm not trying to be hyperbolic here, I actually think Scream 6 is the strongest movie in this franchise. And there are a few things about it, I think, that serve to elevate it above the rest of the series for me. A Scream movie traditionally is like comedy horror, and it doesn't always thread that needle super well for me. It's not quite funny enough to be a comedy, or at least, you know, not a good one, but it's lighthearted enough that it totally robs all of the tense scenes of any tension. Scream 6 is very much not like that. It's got a far darker tone than these movies usually have. Even the cinematography, the camera shots, it's all a lot more like eerie and somber than it usually is. And you might think that this wouldn't work for a Scream movie because Ghostface is traditionally a really incompetent bad guy. He kills people, but it's almost like Scooby-Doo, where it's scary, but then you take off the mask and it's just Joe from down the street, right? And Joe's a total dumbass. Ghostface is usually a very beatable horror villain. Like he's clumsy, he's slow, he's always tripping over shit or getting knocked out. If you got killed by one of the first few Ghostfaces, it's kind of like, you deserve that shit. This Ghostface is significantly more intimidating. He's bigger and stronger, at least he feels like he is. He's more menacing. Historically, Ghostface has used a knife, and I don't think this is spoiling anything because this is in the trailer. There's a scene in a convenience store in Scream 6 where Ghostface is stalking through the aisles with a shotgun. And, damn, it's wild to see. Like, it's genuinely scary compared to the rest of this franchise. And they've done something to his mask, too. They've made it, like, darker and older looking, and, like, it's got some cracks in it. It just makes him look really cool. And actually, it's the entire movie that is just a lot more, like, tense and suspenseful than other Scream movies. Like, you're actually kind of like, oh, shit, this is getting real. I also really love the beginning scene in this. There's always kind of like an opening Ghostface kill in the movie to start things off. And I think when you hold to a formula like that, you run the risk of becoming stale. This opening is very much not stale. That's all I'll say for now, but yeah. I also really like how the series has evolved over the last quarter century, because this is a very with the times franchise, like all the pop culture references. It's kind of a snapshot of like what the horror genre is like to a specific generation, which means that, you know, when I'm going back and watching Scream 1, Scream 2 from the late 90s, a lot of it is before my time, so it feels almost a little outdated. And it's just fun seeing like how they view the modern horror landscape, how they talk about it, and then, you know, they recognize the dichotomy that exists now between, like, you know, traditional horror movies and then this more elevated brand of horror stuff like A24 is putting out, things like The Babadook, The Witch, Hereditary, Midsummer. So I guess it's only fitting that we'd see some elevation from the franchise itself in the modern day. This is just a really good movie. The cast is good too, especially Jenna Ortega, who kind of seems to have taken Anya Taylor-Joy's spot as like the new it girl of the genre. And sometimes if you're rebooting a franchise, you run the risk of, you know, everyone's so attached to the old characters that they hate the new ones. That's not a danger here. I never loved Neve Campbell, who's actually not even in this movie at all. They do bring back Courtney Cox, which I'm just like, do I need another reheated Gale Weathers plotline to make my Scream movie work? Not really. I guess she does have a pretty cool scene fighting Ghostface in this movie. It's more physical and intense than they usually are. It's like they're having a competition to see whose face can look the most plastic. That's the meanest thing I've ever said on this channel. But speaking of mean things I've said, I've got a past video where I make fun of this guy for being named Dermot Mulroney. And Dermot Mulroney is back. Yeah, our guy. Dermot Mulroney has a role in Scream 6 as a tough New York City cop. So yeah, good for you, Dermot Mulroney. Good for this whole new cast of actors here, honestly. And add to that this is a more tense and exciting movie. It is gritty. It is darker than the previous installments. I had a really good time with this. I've got some gripes for sure, but I will wait until the spoiler section for those. For now, I'm gonna give Scream 6 4 stars out of 5. Okay, spoiler talk begins now. So if you haven't seen Scream 6, it's in theaters, go watch it, and then come back. All right, here we go. Welcome back to the hit game show. Who is Ghostface? This year's model, a little meaner than the others, is Dermot Mulroney! Okay, not just Dermot Mulroney. It's actually Dermot Mulroney and Dermot Mulroney's 2 kids. Apparently, Dermot Mulroney was the father of the previous Ghostface, and he's all beaten up over his son's death. So, Dermot Mulroney takes up his son's Ghostface mantle with his other 2 children. That's right, there's 3 Ghostfaces in this movie. And I mean, meh. I don't know that I've ever, said, oh, I just love Scream movies because their endings make so much sense. This is a universe in which like a solid dozen people now, all from the same neighborhood, have all gotten the idea to like wear this dollar store mask and start gutting people at their school. This isn't the usual suspects, right? You're not like finishing a Scream movie like, what? The killer was that new side character? And they got help from that other new side character? So I don't know, the end reveal of these is always just a little like immaterial to me. The real killer is the fun we had along the way. I will say though, despite this iteration of Ghostface being a lot more menacing than past iterations, it's not a lot of people actually dying here, and they're not dying when they should be. Like, it's honestly wild. This movie is going to give stupid people a very skewed perception of how likely they are to survive getting stabbed. We are talking multiple, long, thick, jagged knives just being jammed up to the hilt in people's midsections, like over and over and over again. And they're just up and walking around after. And I can't help but feel like this movie was kind of written by a giant because there are 3 major characters who all should have died. Like, you see the killing blow and you're like, oh shit, that major character obviously just died. And the 5th Scream actually did kill a major character. This one, they all inexplicably live. Which I don't get, because you're proving right now that you don't need the same old cast of characters to make a successful Scream movie. And so, I mean, these things should have a turnover rate in their cast like it's The Walking Dead. Kill them all. Samara Weaving, of course, does actually die. She's the opening kill of this movie. And damn, she brings the term Scream Queen to life in like a whole new way. Because not only is she a queen in a Scream movie now, but she actually can scream. Better than like anyone I've ever seen. Like, we might need to do a wellness check on her. She is convincing. I love that whole scene, by the way, having Ghostface take off his mask like 5 minutes into the movie, because you're like, wait, that's not supposed to happen. So kudos for keeping things fresh. That's my feedback. And, kill more people next time. All right, that about wraps things up. As always, you can check out my original scary stories at the link in the description below. And I'll be back next week with more good shit. But in the meantime, thank you for watching this video, and here's hoping you survive to see the next one.